Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together. Hey, welcome everybody to this very special episode of Ahead for Business. Of course, they're all special, but this one is kind of special to me. I'm going to be having what I believe will be a stimulating conversation with an old friend of mine. His name is Art Cohen, and he and I share in common a kind of a passion for managing engineers. We've both been project managers. We've both supported teams of engineers in the past to deliver amazing results in very short periods of time. And what drew me to Art recently, I mean, we've known each other for a very long time, but what kind of called me back to him was a tagline he puts in his LinkedIn profile, which I hope everybody will visit. Helping engineers deliver the best work of their lives. And as everybody knows, the way you help engineers deliver their very best work is by shaming them in public when they miss a deadline, making sure they understand the deadlines, kidnapping members of their family and holding them hostage until they finish the work they need to do. So now would be a great time to bring out Art Cohen so we could make a liar out of me on all that. Art?
I do that all the time. That's
how you do it, isn't it? I mean, you
exactly.
You drill it down, you scream at them, you berate them.
Yeah, you make it so that their wife throws their laptop in the bathtub, and just actually has happened. So.
I want to hear that story. That one sounds like a good one, but obviously I had it wrong. Now, the reason why I think this is these days a very topical conversation is because getting people to do things is the secret to getting things done. But the conventional wisdom on getting people to do things is the low-hanging fruit version. If I give people a deadline and they miss it and I embarrass them enough, then they won't miss another deadline and I'll get results on time from them. Now, argue with me. Tell me why that's wrong thinking.
Well, in my experience across several, 1 or 2 years in industry, I found that people do their best work when they're actually doing the work because they believe in it and because they feel that they're part of something that's worthwhile. And that doesn't come from shaming. That comes from building a team that actually loves working together. And I think that's been way more successful in my experience than making it a miserable experience that nobody wants to be part of.
Well, tell me, in that regard, then maybe you can review for us a little bit of your background and how you came to discover these things.
I started out as a software engineer for a graphics company, just a junior engineer, and I've had experiences across there. And then I moved to Digital Equipment Corporation, which was where I met you, Al, and worked with a lot of people at Digital and went through experiences in consulting where we would have to track our hours, and that happened across multiple businesses. And I always found that when people were actually focusing specifically on what was expected of them specifically and not what was expected of the team, things didn't go as well. And that goes across everything. That's not just engineering. Even in the sales organization at Digital, When you have individuals who are individually gold and are individually judged and individually shamed, as you put it, they just don't produce as much as a focused team that is all trying to pull the same direction and row the same direction and achieve the same results.
Okay, now that I think is very eloquently put and absolutely resonates with me. But I'm going to put myself in the position of the less evolved manager that you report to. And in that position, I'll say, you know what, Art, you can't be everybody's friend. You got to be tough. How do you push back on that?
Well, actually, I had a similar experience to that. I had a manager who was hired from one of the big three consulting companies, and I was managing a project, and the project was behind schedule because it was not well planned. The management had a different idea of what it was going to take to deliver than the engineering team had. But I would run project status meetings, and I would be personable, and I would talk about team building and how we move forward as a team, and try to make it light so we could actually get some work done. And the feedback I got was, you can't do that. The project's behind schedule. You got to be, if I can say it, you got to be a hard ass. You got to pound on these people, and that just never resonated with me, and that never seemed to work for me. What worked for me was even in some of the worst programs I've been involved with, the death marches, finding a way to turn it into a little less of a painful experience and more of a group challenge has always been much better. I actually had an engineer tell me once, Art, you make sucky things less sucky. And I found that to be a great compliment.
I think so. It's I can relate to every one of these. All stories like this are stories. One of the things I kind of remember as an evolving manager at that computer company you mentioned where we used to work together, and in project management since then, is it's often I felt like I needed to protect the people that I worked with on my teams from the people that I worked for, because if I ever allowed any of that negative vitriol to filter through to the people who worked for me, I was 100% sure that we'd miss all future deadlines. Or if we ever did make the deadlines, we'd make it by producing mediocre, less than high quality results. Do you have you, in your experience, had to protect the people that work for you from the people you work for?
Well, there are artifacts that, the company requires, like the management leadership needs to understand what the status of the project is and where it's going. And generally speaking, they create a set of artifacts that the project program managers have to put together. And so as a program manager, your job is to fill those artifacts out and to make sure that leadership understands where the program is, and at the same time, shield the team from all of that extra work. Engineers really, from my experience, they just want to be left alone to do their work and get the engineering done. And the more meetings they get called into, the more explanations they have to give to people who aren't familiar with the project. It irritates them. It makes them less productive. And so, yeah, protecting them from the people above is definitely is one way to help them feel like they're actually more in charge of what they're working on.
That's there's an Einstein quote that says that the really inspiring, excellent results come from people who can labor in freedom. And I remember an old story about Dr. Grace Hopper, one of the early pioneers in computing, who had a team of sailors whose job was to write the first COBOL programming language compiler using Fortran, a very early version of Fortran.
Yeah.
And, everybody told her it was impossible. And she said the secret to getting it done was to make sure that they never heard that. If my people ever heard that they couldn't do it, then they wouldn't have. And they always had to believe that they could. And I always had to help them believe that they could. And that's how it got done. Right.
And my experience is if if the engineers are comfortable in the team and they understand what the end result, the desired end result is, and if they feel empowered, they do a much better job of planning and designing than I could ever have done sitting down and creating a 500-line project plan. And I've had 800-line project plans before when we did data center moves, for example. Like every step had to be specific and it had to be done at a specific time. But it was the engineering team that built that plan. And I was essentially, I was just the cheerleader. I was the servant leader, if you will, if I can flatter myself. But the team put that project together, and the team delivered on that project, and it was very successful, and it happened in the time it was supposed to.
Well, okay, so how much of that is art? And I know your name is Art. I'm also looking at all these artistic things hanging in the background in your studio there. How much of this is art versus science?
Art versus science? Art as in art, not
as an art form. When you're working with people and trying to get them to do things.
Well, I mean,
trying to inspire them.
There are volumes written on, the mythical man month and the fact that, that 10 women can't have a baby in a month, and there are volumes, much more eloquent volumes of mine written on servant leadership and fifth level management. I think there's a science to it, but I know in my experience, when we'd be in corporate team building exercises, and we'd be doing the colors exercises, or we'd be doing the Myers-Briggs exercises, and then they'd separate everybody out into different corners of the room based on what the results were. The red people, the goal-oriented people, the delivering people, the driving people, there was a bunch of them in one corner of the room, and it would be me and maybe one or two other people, in the like people corner, in the soft skills corner. But at various times in my career, that was extremely valued. I was put in a group of managers who were considered the connecting tissue of the organization, who held it all together when all these people were just driving to goals. So I think there's science to it, but I think there's also a very personal part of it.
Well, that you're reminding me of so many things. I did a long time ago. I had a brief engagement with the people who serving as the Servant Leadership Institute. They were at the time in Indianapolis, and I went there and attended a conference and gave a little paper on servant leadership in IT technology, and they were interested in that. They were legitimately interested in that. But the whole idea of servant leadership seemed even to be something they didn't really fully understand. To me, it was always not just about serving the people that report to you, which obviously is a big component of it. Most people think that's all it is. It's about serving a purpose, working with the people that you serve on your team. So there's got to be this overarching, it's not just us being nice to each other, and it's not just us being friendly with each other. We're actually all pulled here together because something is expected of us.
Right.
So how do you articulate that in a way that inspires people to want to give up their nights and weekends? I mean, you told me this great story of people who just said, you know what, I don't have to go home tonight. I could stay overnight.
Well, and I think part of that is just making people feel valued. And if they understand that you value their time and you value their contribution, then they're more willing to volunteer for things that I would hate to have to ask them to do. So that's part of the team building and setting the goal for the program. Understanding what you're delivering and who you're delivering it for and why is key. And key under that as well is understanding that you can rely on your team and what everyone's skill set is. And like you said, I've had engineers who I don't like asking people to go above and beyond. It's like, I don't want you to give up your weekends. I don't want you to give up your nights. I'll ask you if you have to do it, if it gets to that point, But if we're not at that point, I'm going to say, no, don't do that. Hold that for when it becomes critical. But I've had people on my teams volunteer for the late shifts or the bad work. And some of the stuff we did was critical and had to be done late at night. But it always amazed me how willing people are to step up if they feel part of something.
I want to pick that apart a little bit because, okay, let's say that the work calls for extra effort, and that extra effort means giving up personal time generally, especially in engineering. That means, okay, you're working tonight, or you're going to decide you're going to choose to work tonight. If I tell somebody that they have to work tonight, then the work they're going to do tonight will be less impactful than if I tell people what needs to be done and rely on them to volunteer to work tonight. Because it's not just about being there tonight. It's about doing the things that need to be done tonight because they need to be done. Tell me a little bit.
Right, and then also coming in tomorrow not without a chip on your shoulder because you had to do this extra work tonight. And I think my experience has been that if they feel like their time is valued and they know they're going to get something for it down the line, in other words, you celebrate victories, you celebrate when a project comes to a close. If they know there's going to be appreciated and working as a team. We worked some very late nights perfecting filings before they were sent in, and there till 2 or 3 in the morning. But it was an exciting atmosphere, and it was a friendly atmosphere, and people hung out until it was over, even though their part was done. In one of my first jobs, I worked in a graphics company, and we used to do trade shows. And the woman who ran the trade shows, she had a very strong team orientation. And maybe that imprinted on me very early because I'm very team oriented, and I have a really hard time with people who are very self-oriented. Prima donnas on teams are a huge issue for me. We would do trade shows, and there would be a team there setting up the trade show, but nobody left the setup until the entire thing was done. And we worked as a team to set it up. Even if your part was done, you saw where else you could pitch in. And that was just incredibly inspiring to me. It worked really well, and I thought it was important. And that's the way I've always run teams as well. We're all part of the team. Whatever needs to be done, we do it. I'll sweep the floor, I'll clean the bathroom, whatever it takes. Now, I don't know if I answered your question. I just went off on a great tangent, but
they're always great tangents. Listen, every tangent you take is a worthwhile avenue of conversation. So I'll take what you just said, and I'll say what I know to be true. A big complaint that project managers have is that if they have a team of, let's say, 20 people, it seems like 90% of the work is done by 3 of them. And the other 17 people are on the team, theoretically, ostensibly, but they're not necessarily each putting in 100%. Now, what you just described is the psychology that gets everybody connected to the result, not just a few prima donnas, a few people who believe they know more than everybody else. And may, in fact, there will be superstars on every team. Some people that you know can do more than other people can. But a whole lot more gets done when everybody's doing it rather than just those 3 people. Maybe you can talk about that full participation aspect of it.
Oh, and part of that is as the team forms and tightens, the superstars are relied upon by the other engineers to help them along, and they feel compelled to do that, or they feel honored to do that, to help the other engineers. And it's always good to have an Uber engineer that understands the underpinnings of everything going on. And it's good to have an engineer that the other engineers can look up to. But when the team is working well together, who the star is really isn't as important as the as the progress the team makes towards the goal.
And I know you've had this experience. We talked about that in a kind of a quick pre-interview we had yesterday, where somebody in the organization who runs the organization will just say, you know what, Art, we're not exactly sure what it is you do around here, but we need you to keep doing it because whatever it is you're doing is making a difference around here. What were they talking about when they said that to you?
In that case, organizations have a lot of stovepipes. They have a lot of engineering organizations, and they're all focused in different directions, and they're very focused in the direction that they've been assigned. But the problem is most projects and programs are interdependent, and that interdependent piece is usually given short shrift. It's not usually taken care of because everyone is trying to focus on the direction that they're being measured on. And I think what me and my colleagues used to do is we break down those barriers and make connections between the teams so that everyone could see how their work impacted other teams and vice versa. And then as everyone's working on programs moving forward, there are overlapping tasks, overlapping development issues that have to be handled by other teams. And making your program successful is just as much about making sure that teams that are tertiary to what you're trying to accomplish are also delivering the bits that you need in order to be successful. So making those connections, making sure that the teams, from a macro level, the teams feel connected towards the same end goal.
That's an aspect of team dynamics that I think a lot of I don't want to use the word manager. I want to use the word leader because I think that's really more accurate. An awful lot of people who lead teams think of the team as just the people on the team that actually do the work. But what you've just described is an instinct to pull other people on other teams in because they're resources. They could be helpful. Also, customers. How about putting customers on your team? Did you do that?
Yeah. Well, there's not just other engineering teams, but customers, other departments, other business units. I mean, the work we did would cross the professional business unit, cross marketing. It would cross customer care. I once sent out an email, ill-timed email to about 850,000 customers. And I said, hey, if you haven't come back to fix this, you should come back. If you have, you can ignore this email. That's when I learned that you don't send an email like that to customers because everyone says, well, did I do it or did I not? And so I blew up customer care. Calls went up 20%. So involving other organizations in your program and understanding what you're accomplishing, what you're working on is also very important. Mm-hmm. And I also go back to a story we talked a little bit about the other day where one of the first engineering companies I worked for when I was just an engineer, when I was an engineer, not leading engineering teams, they were very late on delivering an update to the program, and management was upset about that for good reason. So they instituted a solution to a problem they thought they had where engineers weren't focusing enough on their own work. So they started having every engineer record what they were working on an hourly basis and keeping track of that and making sure that they were focused on their work. Well, it was a very interdependent company. It was a very interdependent product, and each piece of the product depended on other pieces of the product. And as soon as people were forced to focus only on what they were working on and turn away people who came for help, everything just came to a crashing halt. It's like no progress was made anywhere. And I think understanding the interdependency, understanding ecosystems, which seems to be very challenging for people, is critical to actually delivering with excellence.
That's great. That's really important. Lurking in the background has been my co-host, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. She had a couple of other things she needed to attend to, but I'm sure she's been paying attention. We're really talking about evolving the typical manager to become more of a coach, really, and maybe a little less of a taskmaster. And coaching is what Dr. Jacalyn does. Dr. Jacalyn, could you join us out here for a bit? Maybe she can, maybe she can't. Well, she'll jump in when she can. She might have gotten that call that she was expecting.
Yeah.
But that whole idea that you're really more of a coach and less of a, I mean, you mentioned before something that really struck me, and that was that 500-line Gantt chart, that big, which everybody loves. I mean, especially executives. They love to see that hanging on the wall because they like to see the red lines for the things that haven't been done on time and the green lines for the things that are. And they want to see more green than red. And little by little, they like to see this kind of dashboard that shows them that everybody's doing what they need to do, even though it never shows that. It absolutely never shows that.
Yeah.
They love that. And in a way, that's a form of tyranny. I mean, when your people see that, then they know they're being judged, they know they're being scored, and it has kind of a toxic effect on the work they do, doesn't it?
Yeah. And feeling like people are looking over their shoulder and they're being judged on their daily work, not on what the output is. And it definitely makes people less excited to come to work every day. And it's not a fun environment to be in.
And the fun environment is what gets the work done. I mean, that being kind of your point.
People come in and they're interacting with their team. They're getting their work done. Obviously, as an engineer, you feel connected to the engineering work. I mean, that's what you enjoy doing. What you don't enjoy doing is going to endless program meetings, going to endless rah-rah meetings. And one of my biggest pet peeves as a program manager is when you get thrown onto a program where you know absolutely nothing about it, you know nothing of what's going on, you know nothing about which teams are involved, and you call a meeting together with every single team in the organization to talk about what you're trying to accomplish, to figure out which of those teams needs to be involved. And you're essentially wasting the time of all these people, and you're giving out the message right there that you don't value their time, that what's important to you is what you're being judged on, not on what everyone's being judged on. So that was always one of my pet peeves, something I tried to avoid like the plague. If I could figure out just which 8 teams I needed to be involved with and not call in 70 teams or 50 teams, I'm much happier about that. And the engineers are happy because they feel like these things are just distracting them and keeping them from actually accomplishing what they need to accomplish and do the work that they really enjoy doing.
Well, those meetings are performative. I mean, we know what those meetings are for. More than anything, I actually don't know what they're for. I've been in so many of them that, and some of them have been kind of funny. I mean, it's almost humorous in a lot of ways, especially when you're talking about somebody who's so high up in the food chain that they're just not familiar at all with the day-to-day. But they feel like they need to be included because they want to see the animals in the zoo, which is kind of like how I've always felt as a member of the teams that I've worked with. They want to see them perform. I mean, they're looking to hear from them that they're doing all the things that the zoo needs done. And so okay, speaking as a potential coach, let's say that somehow magically you ended up on top of the organization. You ended up becoming one of those people, but knowing what you know, which is how work really gets done. If you brought on a new project manager, a new leader of a project, how would you coach them to become more of a humanist and less of a robot automaton?
Oh, you're asking the hard questions. I would tell them to treat people like people, as individuals, to understand what their goals and objectives are, to make sure the team has time to form as a group, that has social time together, team building time. And again, team building, you don't have to do rope courses. Just having everybody go out to the beach or have a lunch together, I think has always been an important step forward in teaming. Getting the team co-located in a single area is always very useful. And then talking about explaining to the team what the goal of the project is, what the program's trying to accomplish, then asking their input for what the best way to get there is, and not projecting or presenting here's what we're gonna do, here's how we're gonna do it, and this is what your part's gonna be. It's like, okay, here's what we're trying to achieve. As a team, what do we think is the best way to achieve this? How would you approach it? And then who's going to do what? And and then spend time figuring out which piece of each program people are attracted to. I want to work on this. I want to work on that. It gives people a feeling of being connected to it and working on what they really want to work on. And just, I think that ends up making people happier and doing more excellent work.
That's you're raising a good point too. That's happier people aren't necessarily more productive, but more productive people become happier if they feel like they're making a contribution. And that the whole idea that it's not a responsibility on your part to get the work done, it's a contribution that you're willing and freely offering, whatever that might be. And it may not be what it says on the Gantt chart you're supposed to be doing Tuesday. It might be something that we never even thought of last week that needs to be done, that you spotted,
right?
That is a unique contribution that you can make that saves the project in a way that, whether you just started on the team last week or you're one of those 2 or 3 prima donnas who knows everything, anybody really can offer that kind of breakthrough, can contribute that kind of a breakthrough if they're just inspired to do it.
Right. And everybody has a different knowledge set, and everyone has a different perspective. I was in a program once where we were fairly far down the road in delivering the project. We had the entire design done, had some great engineers on it. And so one of them said, hey, we should probably ask this other person to look over this and vet it. And we had a meeting. He came in and he vetted it. And the first thing he said was, this is never going to work. You can't do this because that's not how the program works in the internals. It was someone who'd been there a very long time, who was part of the original design team who built the internals for this component, and it changed the entire design. But because someone said, hey, we should talk to Pete and have him look this over, and everybody's experience and everybody's knowledge set is important.
And they have to feel like, even if it's not what's exactly expected of them, they're safe in offering it. They won't be attacked for bringing it up. They won't be. I mean, anybody who thinks that they're going to be yelled at if they wander off the path that was set for them,
that's right,
is just never going to give you what you need. I mean, they're always going to do the absolute minimum that's expected of them, and that's it. That's safe. Right. But people need to be willing to take risks sometimes and step out and run the risk that maybe somebody will speak sharply to them.
I actually burned in my memory is a all hands meeting with the CEO of the company I was working for, and someone had the courage to raise their hand and ask a question, and it was maybe not the greatest question in the world, but the CEO says, I still remember, says, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard. It's like, and the all hands meeting got very quiet after that, and there were no more questions. So
that would pretty much do it. That would that's a wrap.
You shoot the guy that asks the questions, and you don't have to worry about getting too many.
Then you're pretty sure you're not going to get a question from anybody else. Maybe that's what he had in mind, but it's the opposite of brilliant.
That's death to a program. If people aren't willing to step up, if they're afraid to raise issues, there's no way you're going to succeed.
Well, I want to bring up, I know we're coming up on the end of the program. We have a few minutes left. And one of the things I want to get to is your streaming music business. I want you to talk about that. But before we get there, I want to mention that what brought us back together again is our work on ProFit for Teams, which we're hoping will provide a kind of a structured, predictable way to create the kind of unpredictable human environment that it takes to encourage and inspire a team to really do their best work on their best day. And the first name that popped in my head after we conceived the program was Art Cohen, because I knew you kind of did that organically and naturally. And when we get this thing launched, which is soon now, we still have some code to write. That's on me. We still have some code to write. When we get this thing launched, I'm really looking forward to working with you as a facilitator in that, because I think what you have to offer is exactly what engineering teams need to hear. They just don't hear it very often because the conventional wisdom is if you scream and yell at people, you get more out of them. You know, and you and I both know from our own professional experience that's the opposite of the truth. So that was really helpful.
From the very first time we met, you know, I was drawn to your to the way you approach a problem and to the way you approach solutions. It's just always been a joy. You were able to turn in our experience, you were able to turn the OSI model into something interesting and something that you wanted to know more about, and something that turned it into more of a game than a drudge. And I've used that throughout my career. So,
well, thanks, Art. Appreciate that, and we'll get to do some more of that again soon. But tell me about your music business, and tell everybody about it. I want to hear about it.
It's you know, it's been something that's very joyful for me. During the pandemic, I was working from home. We're all working from home, but I noticed having friends in the local music community, I noticed that they couldn't work from home. The gigs all dried up. There's no work for musicians, for performers. No one couldn't buy tickets. You couldn't go into a show. So I was concerned how they were surviving. And I found two people who were actually, aside from being gigging professional musicians, they were also teachers. And I said, well, you know, I'm not doing anything anymore. I can't go out, but I'm still working. So I started taking lessons from musicians to improve my life, and also to provide for some sort of income for musicians, local musicians. And I just really got into the music. I started learning how to play guitar, and I started writing songs. And you know, it's just music is healing, and I just really enjoyed it. So I started a record label, and I'm working with some very talented friends, and we're just kind of at the beginning phases and figuring it out. But the goal is really to support local music, to support local musicians and local singer-songwriters more than it is to make $1 million, which is lucky, because you don't make $1 million in the music business unless you're at the top. So
yeah, but you feel like you made $1 million, and that's kind of what you're aiming for.
It's just to increase the quotient of joy, I guess.
Oh, great. So for people who can't see your contact information on the screen because they're listening podcast style, what's the best way to reach you?
ArtCohenmusic.com is a website. You can go to that.
Mm-hmm. Great. And your email address?
art@fsamusic.com.
Great. And if they want to phone you, I mean, do you want to tell people what your phone number is?
Okay. 619-985-7893. Operators are standing by.
Operator, there you go. And out of town, call collect. Not that anybody ever does that anymore.
That's right. Call collect.
Art, really, this has been instructive for me, reassuring for me, because I knew there was a reason why I wanted to work with you, and now I've been reminded of that. And also, it's always great catching up with you, buddy. So
as I've said anytime, I love hearing your voice, Al. It's always a pleasure.
One last thing, before we go, and we still have a minute or two. AI. You sent me a clip. And it's great. I mean, you sent me a music clip from a friend of yours who used AI to help him write music.
Yeah, it's actually
talk about that experience.
He's actually my guitar teacher, and he's part of one of the premier bands here in San Diego. They have a great following. They produce great concerts. And there's lots of controversy around using AI for music. And there's people on both sides of the argument. The argument that, it's all based on stealing copywritten material that gets pulled into this model to generate things. He uses it as a tool to communicate a musical idea to his band. So he'll play something on guitar and he'll put it into the AI, and the AI will suck it up, create backing tracks, add vocals to it. He'll bring that to the band and say, here, this is the idea that I have. And they'll each make it their own. So the bass player rewrites the bass part, and the guitar player rewrites the guitar part. Keyboards rewrite the keyboard part, and they produce something. But it's a way of getting on the same wavelength very quickly, rather than doing that a little at a time at a rehearsal session. So they go right from concept into rehearsal on a piece, and it cuts the time down. And the other way that you can use it is it'll generate it'll generate stems of bass lines, drum lines, and you can incorporate that into a Pro Tools mix. I prefer to have live musicians do the work because I want to support live musicians, but it is very helpful in helping flesh out ideas and
that it in my experience, I'm using it to help write the code that I'm running behind on for ProFit for Teams.
Mhm.
And I can't rely on it to write the code. I really can't, but it will shorten the time between me knowing what code needs to be written and a runnable, testable version of the code being executed.
Right.
Because a lot of the drudge of it is the syntax and the grammar and the software engineering part of it requires a lot of discipline. And you can short circuit a lot of that using AI. It's not writing the code for you. It's just shortening the process of you writing the code. And you've always got to test it before you release it, because sometimes, more often than not, it gets it wrong. But you're still in the loop there.
Can I play devil's advocate for just a second, though?
Sure.
From a security perspective, I read a great book called "This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends," and I wish I remember the author's name right off the top of my head. But she did the entire book is about cybersecurity, through the beginning up to where we are now, and cybersecurity experts lost the ability to find exploits in code at about 3,000 lines of code. If you have 3,000 lines of code, someone can throw an exploit in there and you can't find it. Imagine, so if you're using an AI to generate code and there's an exploit in the AI, imagine how impossible it will be to find that. So that's just my devil's advocate position.
And that's a good point. Cautionary tale for people out there who might be thinking of maybe having it write all the code. Yeah. I'm using it to write little code blocks, just one little block. Just tell me what the syntax is for that one block of code. And, so I...
Compute a factorial for me.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, Art, listen, thanks, buddy. We'll be talking again soon because we have ProFit stuff to talk about. But I want to thank you for spending the time today talking about what really matters, which is how people are really part of the solution. Mm-hmm. They're not an inconvenience in getting things done. They're not an obstacle to getting things done. They're the reason why it's worth getting things done. And when they feel like they're a part of it, they're making a contribution that matters.
Has to be about people.
Art, you take care. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, buddy. And thank all of you for joining us today on this particular episode. It's a very special episode. Like I said, very special episode of Ahead for Business. And I want to thank my co-host, certainly our producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, who's listening, even though she can't join, and is always an inspiration to me. What she does with her network and how she works with people to create something larger than herself. That's what USA Global TV and Radio is about. And she does it by living a lot of the principles that I think we just talked about in this program. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Ahead for Business.
People are searching for experts every day. Are they finding you, or are they finding someone else? Every day, professionals are building authority through media. We've already built the platform. USA Global TV and Radio. Over 14,000 shows streamed to over 60 countries. This isn't about becoming famous. It's about leverage, visibility, credibility, opportunity. One interview, one conversation, one show, repurposed into content, connection, and business growth. Most people assume hosting a TV show requires a studio, a production team, and a massive budget. Our television packages begin at $1,500 US per month. Professional production, global distribution, replay visibility, built for voices with something to say. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and if this resonates with you, we should talk. USA Global TV and Radio, all rights reserved. Contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.